The video you see right now is the aftermath of an explosion at a cafe in St. Petersburg in Russia.
A prominent Russian military blogger is dead and 25 others were injured. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I am Ricky Mathay.
And I am Nina Richielago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. vows to improve maritime sector. Lawmaker warns over impact of Saudi Arabia's oil production reduction. Philippine authorities gear up for safety as Filipinos take advantage of long weekend vacation. North Korea's Kim Yo-jong slams Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's nuclear ambition. And legal team of former U.S. President Donald Trump claims political persecution. The Marcos administration will do everything to further improve the country's maritime industry to develop world-class and skilled seafarers. Kim Leana for the story.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has promised to further improve the country's maritime industry. President Marcos made the statement on Sunday after the European Commission extended the certification of Filipino seafarers, providing a new opportunity for them to continue working on European vessels. He added that the government will do everything to provide solutions to the issues facing the maritime industry so that the country will continue to develop world-class and skilled seafarers for the whole world. The EU extended the certification of Filipino seafarers after seeing the country's efforts to improve its maritime industry training, while the EU recognized the country's efforts to improve monitoring, supervision, and evaluation for training and assessment of those seeking to work on foreign ships. The Department of Transportation admitted that the Philippines still needs to address 5 deficiencies. This include incorporating simulators in maritime schools, onboard training, and improving the issuance of revalidation of certificates and endorsements for mariners. Migrant Workers Secretary Susan Opte believes that the demand of Filipino seafarers will increase even more after the EU certification extension. As of 2022, there are estimated to be over 450,000 Filipino seafarers around the world. Kim Leana, for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has secured 2 C-130T aircrafts for the Philippine Air Force to be used for humanitarian assistance and disaster response. Madeline Villar Moratillo tells us more.
The Philippines faces many disasters such as storms, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. To address these calamities, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has secured 2 C-130T aircrafts. The President strictly instructed the Philippine Air Force or PAF and the Armed Forces of the Philippines to ensure the safety of every flight to respond to different disasters and offer humanitarian assistance.
May these aircraft serve us well and be used for the common good and the benefit of all Filipino people. With this, I would like to convey and remind everyone of the sheer importance and of airworthiness and structural integrity of our air assets to ensure their effectiveness and guarantee the safety of their users.
Last July 4, 2021, one Philippine Air Force C-130 Hercules aircraft crashed at Jolo Airport in Sulu. This resulted in the death of 50 soldiers and 3 civilians while injuring 46 people. Apart from this, there were other PAF air assets that faced the same fate in previous years. In receiving the new C-130T aircrafts, President Marcos led inspection at Clark Air Base. Marcos said the air assets will be used for the peace of the airways of the country. He also added the military will maintain the condition of the aircrafts for safe flights and to avoid any accidents.
Should any unfortunate events happen, we must be able to assess and to be able to respond quickly. We cannot afford to waste any time in the mission to save lives. Therefore, the existence of these air assets is crucial to ensure that information, aid, and responders are made available to effectively help affected areas.
Madeline Villar Moratillo for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. answers a child's simple question in an 11-minute vlog. What did the child ask the president? Celine Dorado tells us more.
In an email sent to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., a child asked him what a president does on a daily basis. Marcos said that a hectic schedule was not new to him, as he had seen it during the time of his father, former President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. But at the core of his schedule is what is important and meaningful. Marcos shared that he starts his day by checking his phone for messages that require immediate action.
Hindi ko masasabing ako ay nagugulat naman sa schedule ng isang Pangulo dahil nakita ko naman lahat ng ito sa aking father. Natutunan ko sa kanya ay kailangan dahil talagang piling-pili ang mga gagawin mo sa isang araw, sa isang linggo. Kailangan very efficient ang working habits mo. Walang sayang na oras, wala kang ginagawa na wala namang katuturan o walang kabuluhan. Iyon ang pinakamahirap siguro doon sa paggawa ng schedule ng isang Pangulo. Kung paano mag-prioritize. Kaya kailangan piliin mo ng mabuti ano ba talaga yung pinaka-importante dito. Yan ang muna ang unahin natin. At yan po naman ang linalaman ng schedule natin.
The president also doesn't usually eat breakfast. His next meal after dinner is usually lunch, which he has been accustomed to doing for some time. But the president doesn't forget to exercise, as it is one of his stress relievers in the face of heavy workloads.
Ang lagi kong tinitiyak na magkaroon ako ng mapunta ako sa gym at makapag-workout. Unang-una, dahil marami kang mabigat na iniisip. Lahat ng nasubukan kong stress reliever, ang pinakamaganda na pagpagaan ng stress ng isang tao ay mag-exercise. At isa pa yon, kailangan maging matibay ang katawan dahil bawal magkasakit. Babagsak ka ng isang araw, malaking bagay na yun. Maraming mapopospone, maraming mapapalitan ng schedule. Siyempre, binabantayan ko rin yung kinakain ko. Madali naman para sa amin dahil ang diet ng Ilocano isda lang talaga at saka gulay.
The president's schedule usually includes overseeing meetings at Malacanang Palace, from cabinet meetings, sectoral meetings, advisory council meetings, as well as performance audits of agencies and monitoring projects initiated by the administration. The president also attends diplomatic functions, such as receiving representatives and guests from different countries to strengthen the relationship of the Philippines with other nations. There are also times when the president goes out of the palace for external duties, such as inaugurating projects, inspecting programs, and accepting invitations from various groups. The president also administers the oath of office to newly appointed government officials, but a big part of the president's time is spent on paperwork. He usually signs around 50 to 100 documents, which also need to be read and reviewed.
Hindi yun ang pinakamabigat doon dahil yung iba na ngailangan ng desisyon, kaya kailangan pag-aralan. Kahit na ganyang kakapal yung folder, kailangan basahin mo lahat para malaman mo lahat at pag-isipan na mabuti bago pagdesisyonan.
The president also visits and checks on the status of soldiers and inspects their modern equipment. Like a child, the president happily said that being a president can also be enjoyable, especially when doing ordinary things that some can only dream of, like riding a fighter jet recently.
Okay. Take flight, sir.
The president said that he hardly has any rest, as he uses his weekends for other activities, even when there are no official government functions. But personal time with his family is never left out of the president's schedule. Celine Dorado for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Senator Senator Francis Escudero has warned about the possible impact of the reduction in oil production by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Escudero said that the planned reduction in oil production by Saudi Arabia and other members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, will have a significant impact on the country. OPEC earlier announced they will reduce oil production by 1.16 million barrels starting in May. If there is a shortage of supply, Escudero said it would mean an increase in oil prices as well as prices of goods and services. Escudero urged the Department of Finance, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Department of Energy, Department of Agriculture, Department of Trade and Industry, and the Department of Labor and Employment to hold a meeting and develop corrective plans to mitigate the impact of the reduction in oil production. In the past month, the price of oil per barrel dropped to $70, the lowest in the last 15 months. But due to the planned reduction in oil production, it could increase by $10 per barrel.
Filipinos are taking advantage of the long weekend. Most of them are visiting their relatives in provinces to enjoy their vacation. Bus companies are geared up for the upcoming surge of passengers this summer vacation. Coast Guard Commandant Admiral Artemio Abu says they have inspected the Manila North Port to secure the order in Pantalan. He also reminds the passengers that matches, lighters, or flammable materials and sharp things are prohibited on the ship. Balilo says it is important to stay calm if unexpected events occur.
Pagka kayo ho'y magta-travel, iwasan nyo kung magdala ng mga pinagbabawal katulad ng mga likidong makapaminsala, yung mga maaaring sumabog na bagay, maaaring yung simula ng sunog, at saka yung matutulis na bagay.
The Department of Information and Communications Technology, or DICT, urged the public to use the holiday season to register their subscriber identification module cards. DICT Undersecretary and spokesperson Ana Lamentillo says that all unregistered SIM cards will be deactivated after April 26. Lamentillo also observes the number of spam or scam messages has greatly decreased. So far, 32% of the country's 169 million SIMs have been registered.
Allison Shipping Line has asked for help from the family of the victims to identify the bodies on the burnt ship in Basilan. The management of MV Mary Joy 3 is now calling the families to help the authorities to determine the identity of the burnt passengers so that appropriate assistance can be provided for them. Just this Saturday, the search has stopped for the reported missing passengers, including the two soldiers, Corporal Andrew Cerbatos of the 41st Infantry Battalion and Corporal Marion Malda of the 25th Infantry Battalion. The names of the two soldiers did not appear in 13 names released by BFP-BARMM. It is not sure if the two missing soldiers are counted from the 18 burnt passengers from the interior part of the ship. Based on the company's insurance, Allison Shipping Corporation is preparing about 200,000 pesos for the casualties in the tragedy. According to the management of Allison Corporation, the company was able to provide initial assistance to rescued passengers and two passengers who have been identified by relatives. Earlier, the probe team from the Bureau of Fire Protection Central Headquarters returned to the ship that was in Baluk-Baluk Island in the town of H.J. Mutamad to conduct the final investigation for the MV Lady Mary Joy 3 tragedy.
Some Metro Manila markets will roll back the price of eggs. JD Mahina tells us more.
Philippine Egg Board Chairman Gregorio San Diego says the average price of a chicken egg plummets will be rolled back to 1 peso per piece, while small variations cuts to 1 peso and 50 centavos. San Diego says many egg farms suffer from loss due to low demands for chicken eggs. This warns of a possible halt in the production of some producers due to the increase in chicken feeds. He adds the chicken eggs price had plummeted for 4 weeks, with a decline in its production due to low demand. San Diego notes there are still small-sized chicken eggs, with prices lower than 5 pesos in the wholesale, a reason for its loss. JD Mahinay for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, a Russian military blogger dies in a cafe explosion in St. Petersburg. Russia to deploy nuclear weapons near Belarus border. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will visit Poland on Wednesday. Matanang Agila International will be back after a short break.
Sunod sa Counterpoint, silipin natin ang kalagayan ng automotive industry sa bansa.
Ang local automotive industry natin, masasabi nating pillar ng ating ekonomiya.
Usapang girl power.
It's too bad for them.
Too bad for them na
nagkakompetensya sila na babae.
Kasama si Atty. Sal Panelo at Maria Fe Perez Agudo, President and CEO of Changan Motor Philippines Incorporated. Sa Counterpoint, tuwing Miyerkules alas 10:30 ng gabi, dito sa Net 25. Natagpuan na ni Atty. Sal si Cecil.
Alam mo, matagal ka nang hinahanap ng mga staff dito kasi yung pangalang Cecil, yun ang naging palaging nababanggit ko sa mga guest ko.
Welcome back to Matanang Agila International. A prominent Russian military blogger is dead and 32 others injured in an explosion Sunday at a cafe in St. Petersburg. Vladimir Tatarsky had been a supporter of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Interior Ministry is saying that an unidentified device exploded in the cafe. It says a murder investigation has been opened and everyone in the establishment at the time is being checked for involvement. 24 people had been taken to hospital. 6 of the injured are said to be in serious condition. The TASS news agency quotes a police source as saying the explosive device had been hidden inside a statue given to Tatarsky as a gift. The RIA Novosti agency quotes a source saying a girl known to Tatarsky had dropped off the package. Tatarsky, whose real name is Maxim Fomin, has more than 500,000 followers on Telegram.
A close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin says Moscow plans to station tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. This move is likely to raise tensions with NATO. The alliance has increased troop presence in neighboring countries in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February last year. Russian ambassador to Belarus Boris Gryzlov said on Sunday night that the weapons would be moved to the country's western border to ensure security. The envoy did not specify exactly where the weapons would be stationed, although Gryzlov said a storage facility would be completed by July the 1st. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko previously stated that strategic nuclear weapons would be deployed on his country's territory. In addition, he would have a position in Russia's tactical nuclear arsenal.
North Korea's Kim Yo-jong slams President Volodymyr Zelensky's nuclear ambition. Zelensky launched a website to establish an online petition to deploy U.S. nuclear weapons to Ukraine or turn Kyiv into a state with a set arms. Kim Yo-jong commented on Zelensky's ambition as a plausible veil for his government's sinister political plot. Kim Yo-jong noted that Kyiv had spoken about its nuclear ambition before the outbreak of the conflict with Russia last February 2022. This includes at the Munich Security Conference before Moscow started its military force. Zelensky's petition requires 25,000 signatures to be considered by the head of state. So far, 650 people had supported the appeal.
Poland said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is to make an official visit to Warsaw on Wednesday. The Kyiv leader will reportedly deliver remarks on how Poland is helping Ukraine. Sources say Zelensky will meet his Polish counterpart, Andrzej Duda. Discussions with the Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki are also planned. Before Warsaw, Zelensky has already visited Washington, London, Paris, and Brussels.
Donald Trump Jr. claims Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is the highest paid actor of 2022. Trump Jr. shared a screenshot of a Twitter conversation on Instagram. The Daily Loud listed Tom Cruise as 2022's highest paid actor. A commenter said Zelensky was the highest paid actor with $18 billion compared to Cruz's $100 million. Yet, Trump Jr. claims Zelensky received more than $1 billion. Reports say that Trumps have repeatedly criticized the volume of American aid to Zelensky's government. Yet, RT News believes Trump Jr. got his figures wrong. The news agency says since Russia's military operation in Ukraine, U.S. has allocated around $113 billion for military, economic, and humanitarian aid to Kyiv. If aid from EU and its individual members plus U.S. allies are taken into account, the total sum sent to Kyiv adds up to more than $143.6 billion, or nearly 25 times Ukraine's 2021 defense budget.
Ukraine's army says it still holds control of the eastern city of Bakhmut. Russia's paramilitary group Wagner claims that it had captured the administration building. However, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine posted on Facebook that they are repelling numerous enemy attacks in order to hold the city. Ukraine says the battle for Bakhmut is key to holding back Russian forces along the entire eastern front. The fight for the industrial town is the longest battle of Russia's offensive in Ukraine.
Russian paramilitary groups claims they legally captured Ukraine's Bakhmut. Wagner head Yevgeny Prigozhin posted a video on his Telegram channel showing him holding a Russian flag. Prigozhin says they will plant the flag on Bakhmut City Hall. He adds they captured Bakhmut in a legal sense. Now they are in control of the area. However, the Ukrainian military says they had repelled more than 20 enemy attacks who tried to take control of the town.
Oil prices soared Monday after top producers unveiled a shock output cut of more than 1 million barrels per day. However, the decision by the OPEC Plus cartel OPEC Plus cartel found concerns about a fresh spike in prices that could put pressure on central banks to push interest rates higher. Both main crude contracts jumped around 8% at one point following the cut by OPEC, which was the biggest since the group slashed 2 million barrels per day in October. It came on top of a Russian decision to extend a cut of 500,000 barrels per day and in spite of U.S. calls to increase production. A Saudi Energy Ministry official emphasized that this is a precautionary measure aimed at supporting the stability of the oil market. Crude prices have come down over the past year. Concerns about a possible recession caused by higher borrowing costs have offset supply worries sparked by sanctions on Russia.
Taiwan and Guatemala vowed closer cooperation during a visit by President Tsai Ing-wen to the Central American country. Tsai promised Taiwan would continue assisting Guatemala in various political and economic fields. Guatemalan President Alejandro Giammattei also maintained to recognize the sovereignty of Taiwan.
未来，台湾和瓜地马拉会继续相互扶持，深化各领域的合作。我们也会秉持踏实外交、互惠互助的目标，支持友邦长期实质的发展，继续和国际上的民主伙伴相互合作。谢谢大家。
Reafirmo ante usted el compromiso incondicional de que Guatemala, como parte esencial de su política exterior, va a seguir en favor del reconocimiento de la soberanía de la República de China, Taiwán.
Giammattei also spoke out against tensions generated by mainland China in the Taiwan Strait. He urged Beijing to end the geopolitical tensions which cause anxiety to the citizens of the Republic of China, Taiwan.
China has launched a cybersecurity probe into one of America's largest memory chip makers. The Cyberspace Administration of China, or CAC, said they will review products sold by Micron Technology in the country. CAC explained their decision aims to ensure the security of key information infrastructure supply chains, prevent cybersecurity risks, and maintain national security. Some source says China's move is an apparent retaliation after U.S. allies in Asia and Europe announced new restrictions on the sale of key technology to Beijing. Micron Technology said they are cooperating fully with the CAC.
The legal team of Donald Trump slams the former president's historic indictment as political persecution. Trump is also critical of the legal proceeding, describing it as a witch hunt. Though Trump's indictment is still under seal and circumstances of his arraignment remain unclear, attorney Joe Tacopino blasted key witness Michael Cohen. Tacopino claims Cohen is a pathological and convicted liar. Cohen's lawyer, Lanny Davis, defended his client and said substantial documentation was provided to support the expected charges against Trump. But another lawyer from Trump, James Trusty, believes the indictment will have legal frailties that will be subjected to a legitimate motion to dismiss early on. Law enforcement agencies are gearing up for protests as Trump is expected to be fingerprinted and photographed. Trump supporters also gather outside an international golf club in Florida to cheer the former U.S. leader.
What drives me here, the injustice, what's happening to this country. We don't have freedom. Crime is out of control. Our borders are open. No border, no country. And look what they're doing to the President of the United States, Donald Trump. It's unbelievable. Double standards has to stop. I'm for equal justice, fair justice for all.
Up next, Ecuador declares state of emergency for drug trafficking. Supporters of Kosovo ex-President Hashim Thaçi rallied in Pristina. And Algerian journalist is sentenced to 3 years in prison. Stay tuned. Mata ng Agila International will be back for more global news.
Public Affairs program. And the star goes to Open for Business Next 25.
It is a signal to the world that we are open for business.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos. Every Sunday, 9 p.m.
Best friend! Kanina ka pa? Hindi, kadarating ko lang.
Kung ako sa'yo, aamin na lang ako.
Ganun?
Oo!
Papalit tayo posisyon.
O sige.
Mami ka na!
Ako! Ako ang gumawa ng krimen.
Ang title ng ating game ay Lamonade. Ibig sabihin na lamon tayo ng strawberry champorado.
This portion
An ancient English pottery is working non-stop to meet the demand for excellent China mementos before King Charles's coronation on May 6. From United Kingdom, our correspondent Sarah Alcantara tells us more.
Just 5 weeks before King Charles III is crowned at Westminster Abbey on May 6, a historic English pottery is working flat out to meet the demand for the fine bone China souvenirs. Established in 1888 in Long, one of the 6 towns that make up the city of Stoke-on-Trent, Duchess China has been making fine bone china for over 130 years. The commemorative plates, mugs, and other items the Duchess China is making now were inspired by items produced in 1937 for the coronation of his grandfather, King George VI.
Previously, we wanted it to look very British and very sort of traditional, considering all the traditional ways that we make the stuff, and just trying to get that feeling across, which hopefully we've caught it within the product.
The bold red, white, and blue design incorporates the Tudor crown of English monarchs from the time of Henry VIII with the words, "God Save the King" in large gold letters. Produced using meticulous techniques honed over generations, each piece will go through the hands of over 20 craftspeople before it is finished.
Oh yeah, something like a mug, you're probably having 25 to 30 sets of hands that will actually touch that product. Again, I don't think people actually stop and think what work goes into these things. Hopefully, with more people coming now and filming and having access to the sites, it's something that people can appreciate more. And hopefully it means a bit more to them, and it's just a really nice item, that all the work and love really that's gone into making it.
The factory is currently producing its ceramics 5 days a week instead of the usual 2 to 3 and has had to take on extra staff. A handful of ceramics firms remain in Stoke and Duchess is the last, dating from the 19th century, that still manufactures its products from start to finish in the city. Sims hopes the firm's royal collection will be the start of a new era for the enterprise. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I am Sara Alcantara for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
A surge in drug-related crime has prompted Ecuador to declare a state of emergency in the nation's main port and several other areas. The declaration allows police to set up checkpoints and conduct searches of people and property without first obtaining a warrant. Security forces will enforce the decree. President Guillermo Lasso is not saying how long the state of emergency will last. He says it will include a nightly curfew from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. He declared 3 similar states of emergency last year in the port of Guayaquil and neighboring districts. The region has faced a sharp increase in organized crime-related killings. Ecuador lies between the major cocaine-producing countries of Colombia and Peru. It has become a major drug distribution center for narcotics bound for the United States and Europe.
For the 13th straight week, Israelis in several cities across the country protested against judicial reforms. The largest protest occurred in Tel Aviv. Local media report hundreds of thousands of people filled the streets. This is what it looked like in Israel's commercial hub of Tel Aviv. Demonstrators carrying Israeli flags marched through the city center, chanting democracy. Others carried placards condemning the hard-right government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Police used water cannons to disperse protesters, blocking a major highway. The reforms give lawmakers more control over the Supreme Court and the appointment of its judges.
Finland's Social Democratic Prime Minister Sanna Marin conceded defeat in Sunday's general election. She was ousted by Conservative leader Petteri Orpo. Marin's party finished third behind the center-right and the far-right. She also congratulated all the parties and said democracy has spoken.
Tämä on hieno päivä, koska me ollaan pärjätty vaaleissa hyvin. Onnittelut myös vaalien muille voittajille, onnittelut kokoomukselle, onnittelut perussuomalaisille. Demokratia on puhunut, suomalaiset ihmiset ovat äänensä antaneet ja demokratian juhla on aina upea asia.
Meanwhile, Finland's National Coalition Party supporters are delighted with Orpo's victory. Orpo said his top priority is Helsinki's economy. He also vowed to stop increasing the country's debt. Finland's debt-to-GDP ratio has risen from 64% in 2019 to 73% under Marin's leadership.
Kenya's President William Ruto is urging opposition leader Raila Odinga to call off protests every Monday and Thursday. Ruto says the street rallies are a distraction. Odinga agreed to halt the protests, saying his party will hold talks with the government, but he warns the demonstrations could return. Odinga claims Ruto stole last year's election and his government has failed to control the cost of living in Kenya.
The violence, chaos, and disorder continues to distract our national focus of economic transformation. 3 Kenyans, among them a police officer, have lost their lives in the protest. More than 400 Kenyans, including at least 60 security officers, have been injured.
7, therefore, we reserve our rights to call for demonstrations should this process not bear fruit. Should there be no meaningful engagement or response from Hon Ruto to our counter-offer, we resolve to resume our demonstrations after 1 week.
Thousands of supporters of the ex-president of Kosovo rallied in the country's capital of Pristina. This the day before he goes on trial for war crimes. Hashim Tachi will be tried by the International War Crimes Court in The Hague beginning today. Tachi is a former leader in the Kosovo Liberation Army. He resigned from the presidency in the late 2020 after the Kosovo Specialist Chamber indicted him and 3 others for an array of crimes. They include murder, torture, and persecution during the 1998 to 1999 independence war with Serbia. The crimes had allegedly been committed by former Liberation Army guerrillas during the bloody insurgency between ethnic Albanian fighters and Serb forces. The opposition Democratic Party of Kosovo organized a demonstration. Tachi and other guerrilla leaders founded the party after the war.
An Algerian journalist has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for foreign financing of his business. El Kadi is one of the last independent media bosses in the North African nation. Kadi had been the director of Maghreb emergent news websites and Radio M. He had been accused of receiving money and privileges from people and organizations both inside and outside of the country. In exchange for the money, prosecutors say Kadi carried out activities that could harm state security. The court also ordered the dissolution of the company behind Kadi's 2 media outlets and fined it more than $73,000. Amnesty International has denounced the trial. Kadi's lawyer says he will appeal.
Anti-narcotics agents in the Dominican Republic have made a huge drug bust. Agents found more than 2 tons of cocaine stashed in a shipment of bananas. The bananas had been in a refrigerator-type container. The container had come from Ecuador and had the Netherlands as its final destination. It took authorities just over 10 hours to confiscate the entire stash, which consisted of nearly 2,200 packages. It is considered the largest seizure ever in the Caribbean nation. So far this year, authorities have seized more than 5 tons of drugs in the Dominican Republic. Smuggling drugs in fruit shipments is not uncommon.
In Karachi, Pakistan, at least 13 people were killed and 10 others injured in a crush among people waiting for food donations. Local police said the donations sparked a stampede in the inflation-hit nation. Pakistan has been racked by economic turmoil for months. The rupee has been crumbling and staple food prices shot up nearly 50%. The country battles a balance of payments crisis, which has forced it into bailout talks with the International Monetary Fund. A senior police officer said the stampede happened when needy women with children flocked to a factory distributing alms.
South Sudanese soldiers have arrived in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to bolster forces fighting rebel groups. At least 45 soldiers touched down in Goma on Sunday, where they will join regional forces fighting M23 rebels. Much of the eastern part of the Congo has been captured by M23 militants. The South Sudanese soldiers are part of a 7-nation military force created last June to stabilize the region. Much of this area has been plagued by armed groups, a legacy of regional wars that flared in the 1990s and 2000s. Violence by rebel groups has displaced thousands of people. Efforts to defuse the trouble have failed. A ceasefire mediated by Angola last month collapsed almost immediately. The Congo has accused neighboring Rwanda of backing the M23.
A Bangladesh newspaper editor has been granted bail after being charged under a controversial digital law. Authorities arrested 78-year-old Matthew Rahman and a reporter, accusing them of spreading false news. The case stems from a story last month about the high cost of living. The story had been published in Rahman's paper, the Bengali language daily Pratham Alo. It quoted ordinary people talking about their struggles to afford basic necessities. The two are accused of smearing of the image of the government and for raising questions about the achievements of Bangladesh. The charges under the Digital Security Act have stoked concerns that Bangladesh, under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, has become increasingly authoritarian. In recent months, the nation's dwindling number of independent media and journalists has come under increasing attack by the government and Hasina's ruling party. A government statement said Japan will stop testing travelers arriving from mainland China from the coronavirus. From Wednesday, arrivals from China will have to show proof of vaccination or a negative result obtained before departure. Chinese tourists made up around a third of all visitors to Japan before the pandemic. Tokyo's decision ends a COVID border policy slammed as discriminatory by Beijing. Britain previously said travelers flying in from China would no longer need proof of a negative test from April 5.
Coronary artery disease continues to be the primary cause of death locally and globally among countless people. Samantha Intal has the details.
Heart disease. There is hope, don't give up. This is a topic of discussion at the Usapang Puso sa Puso or UPP Health Forum, which is organized by the Philippine Heart Association or PHA. Doctors from PHA have been given early treatment and healthy lifestyle modifications to help manage the symptoms of heart failure. Doctors mentioned coronary artery disease or CAD, or also known as ischemic heart disease, is one of the underlying cause of death in the Philippines and also the world. PHA Director 3 and Advocacy Committee Chair Dr. Luigi Segundo states there are risk factors for people with heart disease, such as drinking alcohol, smoking, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and genetics. He also explained other symptoms of heart failure.
Ito yung mga common, ilan lang po sa mga pangkaraniwang sintomas ng heart failure. Hinihingal, madaling mapagod, nagkakaroon ng manas, yung pong namamaga yung legs at minsan pati umaabot sa tiyan, o kaya kumakabog yung dibdib, baka may heart failure na kayo. Pero the good news is, heart failure is no longer a curse among patients suffering from it.
Samantha Ital for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
A giant lightning bolt struck the spire of the One World Trade Center building in New York City. The bolt illuminated the sky over the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. The National Weather Service had warned about powerful thunderstorms and severe winds in the New York City area. The 1,776-foot tall structure was built in place of the World Trade Center skyscrapers that were destroyed during the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001.
In Papua New Guinea, environment experts are pushing strategies to combat the impact of climate change, one of which is the REDD approach, or that's reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. Eco Hortaleza Quiñol reports.
The first trimester of the year brings major impact of global warming in Papua New Guinea. Several unprecedented and often devastating occurrences that affect human life has been blamed on climate change. Catastrophic floods, heavy rains, and higher sea levels worry people across the globe. Papua New Guinea's Climate Change Development Authority, or CCDA, believes climate change does not discriminate. It is a threat to the country as it is to the rest of the world. The sinking of Carteret Islands in Bougainville and the erosion of coastal shorelines are clear examples how climate change continues to threaten the country. The Climate Change Development Authority and the government are pushing to reduce the impact of climate change in Papua New Guinea. In place are policies and action plans, one of which is the REDD, or Red Plus strategy.
For Papua New Guinea, we have the National Red Plus strategy. It sets a way for how the country intends to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that lead to climate change. And also we have mitigation and adaptation targets as spelled out under the country's nationally determined contributions. Those targets need to be focused on, and all stakeholders, government, private sectors, civil society organizations, and the private citizens should work collectively hand in hand to implement those existing plans and policies. And for Papua New Guinea, and if other countries as well, if they could also do the same, then we could address climate change collectively as a globe.
Addressing the impact of climate change is something countries must do now and not later. Eco Hortaleza Quiñola, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Coming right up, McDonald's in the U.S. is shutting off their offices temporarily. And Marvel released Secret Invasion trailer. Catch more news when Mata ng Agila International returns. McDonald's is temporarily shutting off its offices in the U.S. in preparation of layoffs to its employees. The move is part of a broader company reorganization for the food chain giant amidst concerns about a slowing economy. The announcement was through a memo given to its employees and the U.S. and international staff. The company asked its employees to work from home and cancel all in-person meetings. However, it has not commented how many employees are being laid off over the course of this week. In January, Chief Executive Chris Kamchensky said that the company wants to review corporate staffing levels as part of an updated business strategy, which could lead to layoffs in some areas and expansion in others.
Unemployment in Russia fell to 3.5% in February, according to data released by the Federal State Statistics Service, or Rosstat. The rate is the lowest since Rosstat began publishing the figures in 1991. According to the report, the previous record low was recorded in January when unemployment was 3.6%. In February 2023, 2.6 million people aged 15 and over were classified as unemployed. Data show that the number of jobless residents in February was 2.6 million, 99,000 fewer than in the previous month. Another, or around 700,000 citizens had registered as unemployed in Russia as of the end of February.
Tesla giant reported a modest 4% rise in sales for this year's first quarter. The recent sales report also marked the fourth straight quarter that Tesla has produced more vehicles than it has delivered to customers. Tesla said there was an increase in the number of its more expensive models, the Model S and Model X, in transit to Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific region. Yet it does denote that over the last 12 months, Tesla has produced 78,000 more cars than it has sold. News sources claim Tesla's talk of strong demand may not be backed up by the numbers. The company reported it completed sales of 422,875 vehicles in the quarter. The number is short of the forecast of 430,000 vehicles from analysts. Recent production and sales also suggest that Tesla is below the 50% annual growth target it has set for the company long term.
Marvel has released the Secret Invasion trailer as Samuel L. Jackson returns as Nick Fury. The trailer reveals Nick Fury has been off-planet hiding since the Avengers managed reversing Thanos' snap. However, he doesn't get in touch with the Avengers and tries to do it all on his own. The new Marvel series will have cast members return to the MCU fold, such as Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, Ben Mendelsohn as the shape-shifting Skrull Talos, Kobe Smulders as Mariah Hill, Don Cheadle as James Rhodes or War Machine, and Martin Freeman as CIA operative Everett K. Ross. Secret Invasion will drop on Disney Plus on June 21st, 2023.
A Filipino-American artist brings to New York her participatory public art installation, which she says reimagines the architecture of the first permanent Asian-American settlement in the U.S. In Long Island City, Joanne Soriano reports.
What can an exhibit on climate change teach us about Filipino history in the United States? At Socrates Sculpture Park in Long Island City, New York, a show entitled Sink or Swim Climate Futures is currently exhibiting 5 projects addressing the urgency and challenges of climate change. Among the various site-specific installations is one structure that will be very familiar to Filipinos. This piece, called Disappearing St. Malo, was designed by Filipino-American artist Chayan Concepcion, who we were able to speak with.
Disappearing St. Malo is a participatory public art installation. It's a freestanding structure made of dimensional lumber, bamboo, and it has a thatch roof made of industrial grade mylar. The structure itself reimagines the architecture of the first permanent Asian American settlement in the United States, which was a floating fishing village in Louisiana established by Filipino sailors. One of the most interesting parts of the history of St. Malo is that it's so misunderstood. There is still a lot of things we don't know about St. Malo, and remnants of the village exist today, but it's mostly gone. There is a marker of where it once stood. A lot of the times throughout history, the men of St. Malo, they were called Manila men, painted as pirates, they were painted as eaters of human flesh, but they were actually very autonomous. They were making money. They were changing the fishing industry in Louisiana. So they were powerful. So I wanted to remember this place. I wanted to talk about this history because I'm 30 years old and just discovering that the first permanent Asian American settlement was by Filipinos. And so part of my work wanting to bring visibility and recognition for our history is important to me.
In Long Island City, New York, Joanne Soriano for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
And to kick off your week, here's a quote from American broadcaster Germany Kant. Your Monday morning thoughts set the tone for your whole week. See yourself getting stronger and living a fulfilling, happier, healthier life.
You know, I believe that to be true. Every Monday morning when I wake up, my first thought is that it is going to be a great week ahead of me. And I think that really makes a big impact on how your week will turn out. Exactly.
Wow, so you finally recharge for the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Makes a huge difference.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Ricky Matay.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.